Hello everybody and welcome back to Juno New Origins, where as promised, I have charged up all of our batteries here, and that should be absolutely fantastic in theory. So now what I want to do is I want to plan a burn about here, and I'm going to move our periapsis down to perhaps about, I'm thinking somewhere around 930 kilometers, something like this. That should be pretty decent. So that's 11 meters per second. We'll go ahead and execute that. Lock to it. Auto burn not achievable. Okay, that's exciting. We're going to try this right up over here then. Okay, so we're angling for somewhere around 926 should be fine. Just position correctly this time. I didn't press this button, and that was the problem. That's understood. Okay, so now we're in this position here. So I'm going to jettison this Methalox here at this time. And let's go ahead and do that. There's also this second interstage here that is very awkward. But let's go ahead and position ourselves at the retrograde position here. Is our gyroscope off? Our gyroscope is off. There we go. Let's turn our gyroscope on for the time being and then turn it back off. And I just want to do something kind of like that. Okay, there we go. So now what we want to do is we want to warp around until we are about to enter the atmosphere, which should be somewhere around... Oh, hang on. We're going this way. That's fine. So at this point, we're going to want to warp around to somewhere like here. But we found out that 925 was like the actual position, right? So we actually want to burn about here, and I'm going to drop this about 25 kilometers into the atmosphere, so to 904. Let's go ahead and do that. And we'll execute this burn. There we go. So we want to be pulling fuel from here. So we want to drain fuel here and fill fuel here. Excellent. So now I'm going to aerobrake until we know that we're not coming back out of the atmosphere. So we're just going to come on in here. I want to have us be assigned to lock velocity retrograde. There we go. And let's bring this into somewhere around here. And I'm going to stow our solar panels. There we go. Excellent. We'll just do like that. Okay, so at this point, we need this guy to be on to hold attitude. What? No, lock velocity retrograde. What does this plan burn? Okay, there we go. So we want to be about here. So we can see there's an ambient temperature, and let's go through this at about 10x. That'll be fine. And we can see our drag loss is fairly negligible at this point, right? That is absolutely understood, but I want to continue to do this until we see this apoapsis dip down by a little bit over 100 kilometers is the current goal. So 902 kilometers will be fine, and we're going to burn off the fuel in these engines once we are completely trapped by the atmosphere and we're not coming back out, is the idea. I don't think that'll quite happen on this pass. I hope it doesn't. Actually, I think it will. This single aerobrake pass, I think, is going to do it. 5.8 minutes to periapsis. Yeah, that's increasing. We're going to burn. Okay, so we're going to burn off our remaining fuel at this time, and all we have for power is what we've got here, which should be more than sufficient. We should have plenty of power. We'll have a little bit less fuel than we did before, but a lot more power is the overall idea. So we're in surface velocity here, whatever surface means, over a gas giant. We're not going to be re-extending our solar panels. We're not coming back out. Okay, so far so good. We're down to about 35% fuel remaining in these tanks. I just want to shave off whatever speed we can here with our remaining fuel. So there we go. We're down to about 5,300 meters per second. Looking good. And this last little bit, that'll burn out very quickly. So that fuel is now gone. There's no reason to keep these engines around. So let's go ahead and jettison that. It's a little bit awkward in that it apparently has more drag than the rest of us. Let's flip this over like that so that it separates. There we go. And then we'll flip this right on back to velocity retrograde. So that's going to burn a little bit of power, but that should be fine. So we now see our heat shield building up temperature here. Looks good. And we also see a decent amount of drag force. So that's a lot more drag force on the heat shield than there is on the solar panel arrays. That's a good sign. And the temperature of this fuel tank is remaining quite low. So this heat shield will get burned through eventually. And you can see our surface speed is currently increasing, but that's absolutely understood. So we're going to be going down, looks like in the day side. That looks good for now. We just need to hold this attitude and let the heat build on up, and our surface velocity should start dropping here fairly soon. This is currently just that gravity is overwhelming our drag loss, which is not surprising at this altitude height. So that looks good. Our lateral velocity should be decreasing at this point, but our vertical velocity is what's going up. So you can see our surface speed is increasing, but not at the same speed that our vertical velocity is increasing. But our lateral velocity is going down at this point. Not a lot. This atmosphere is still quite thin. But for the moment, that's fine. You can see we're up to about 600 newtons of drag force there. And here we're at about 70, 80 newtons of drag force. And these guys out here, they're at about 35 newtons. So it's not a huge amount of drag loss at this juncture, but that will be building up. This lateral speed is actually increasing. That's strange to me. Why would that be the case? What's our orbital velocity? Okay, noted. Well, overall, our potential energy is reducing across the board. It's just that this air density is not very high at this point, right? We did burn off all of that fuel, so that will put us in a position where our craft mass is relatively low, although this battery up here is going to be pretty heavy. But the battery was necessary. So I want to check the temperature of this heat shield for right now. We can see that's still cruising on upwards at about 560 Celsius, or actually like 600 Celsius at this point. But it is protecting the rest of our craft nicely. The temperature of these piston legs is increasing, but it's not terrible. We may end up retracting them, but they have more drag while they are extended. So for now, that seems reasonably fine. We can see the temperature of that heat shield really going up, but we're not seeing any ablation happening just yet. So far, so good on that heat shield. Of course, as this temperature increases, that means we're getting more and more and more friction. So that means that our drag is increasing by a lot. And that's definitely appearing to happen. So I'm looking at our lateral and our vertical velocities here. Okay, definitely noted. That drag loss is now up over a meter per second squared. And it's increasing very rapidly. But I'm thinking Atraitus has a significantly higher amount of gravity than Atraitus does, perhaps. That might be why we're struggling with this a bit. But look at our orbital velocity here. It's barely increasing right now. So that is a very good sign. We can see here the temperature of that heat shield really, really, really high. And we're losing ablation at this point, but that drag force is going up very quickly. This heat shield may end up failing, though. This is remarkable if that's the case. If that heat shield isn't enough, that's crazy. We can definitely soup this up if we need to. But this is wild. We are decelerating in orbital velocity, finally. But I think it might be too little too late. We're up over 10 kilonewtons of drag force now. That drag loss is really skyrocketing. Our Mach number is 5.32. And I'm just watching that heat shield. The heat shield is doing its job right now, to be sure. But, yikes. This is a lot. We're up to 15 kilonewtons of drag force. Our orbital velocity is still not going down by all that much. And we're almost burnt through that ablative heat shield. Wild stuff. We might need to crank that up a bit. Okay, yeah, this heat shield is about to fail. There it goes. Heat shield has failed. So the heat shield failed. Now we're watching the rest of this build up its temperature, right? It's quite low temperature in comparison. The drag forces are a lot lower, and these piston legs are now taking heat damage. I'm going to retract them. We're probably going to remove them for the next iteration, because at this point, we need a next iteration. Look at this heat buildup. Wow. Okay, so we definitely need a next iteration on that. So we're going to save that flight that is destroyed, and we're going to work on iterating that. So the next thing that we're going to need to do, I'm going to detach... let's see here. That's a battery. That's an interstage there. We don't actually need this interstage, right? So let's reconnect that. Let's detach at this battery, and this interstage should go away. That's not necessary. I'm going to get rid of these landing legs. They should not be necessary. And then the next question is, can we soup up the heat shield that's in here at all? So let's take a look at this. We could definitely... Yeah, we can crank up the heat shield on it. We can roughly double it there. I don't think that'll be enough, to be honest. We can turn down the battery on this to like 25%. That'll save us a fair amount of mass on this, I think. No, that's the same amount of mass. And the same price. It's just whether it's charged or not. Okay, so that's a thing. We can also heat treat all of these components, right? So we can heat shield this, we can heat shield this, we can heat shield this. So we can toss some heat shielding in on all of that, just like that. This heat shield is roughly double where it was before. And then we can duplicate this guy, and we can put this on here like that, remove this, and we can put a second heat shield here. Like that. That's my idea. We also have a little bit more headroom in our verticality. I don't think we need to actually change that, though. So for right now, we can do something like this. So as you can see, we could expand this a little taller if we needed to. I don't think we need to right now. We can try bringing in more heat shields in that stack if we need to. So, I mean, that'll do the trick in theory. Let's make sure our staging is good. We've made some slight changes to the staging. So 19 here, that looks good. 12 here, that looks good. 6 here, that looks good. Wyvern engine and this interstage, yes. We've got these 6 interstages, that is fine. Empty stage here, and then we've got these 4 engines and this interstage, and then we've got these 2 interstages, which this should really be in its own, but we're probably not going to really utilize that. Maybe we will. Okay, so at this point, let's go ahead and save that again, and let's try this again. This is a much, much more difficult entry than Atraitus, for sure. To be clear, I was surprised that Atraitus was as straightforward as it was. We didn't even need a heat shield. That was remarkable. Atraitus is a whole different beast. That's clear. So let's go ahead and launch this thing, and let's head out again. It won't take us very long to get there, of course, so we can just boost on through that. That was quite a veer off there. Okay, I still don't know why it does that at the beginning of the flight. It's very awkward, but whatever. Okay, so there's that outer shell gone. And the inner shell. And the center core. Solar panels are deployed, and let's bring this right on up to 500 kilometers. We're going to get there the same way we have in the past, so no big changes. So let's get this up into orbit. Let's get an escape velocity. Why are we spinning? Okay, whatever. I think it's these solar panels clipping together, to be honest. We might want to address that. But for the moment, this is fine. So we are in orbit at this point, but we're going to need to circularize a little bit. That'll be absolutely fine. Let's warp towards this apoapsis and get our orbital insertion completed. So we've got about 10 minutes of warp time here. Now about 5. Okay, putting it back onto 10x. And we've lit up that engine. Cool. So we've adjusted our mass a little bit, so it's not surprising that we're a little off on this orbital insertion, but it really does not matter. So sometime around here, we'll plan a burn, and this is going to be a big old burn like this. We're probably going to want to delay that a little bit. So something about like that. Let's just put ourselves into an escape trajectory, and this is a little much. That's a lot much, actually. So I'll just put it into something like this. But really, the other side would be the way that we'd want to go. So that would be out over here. We'll need a little bit more velocity on this side, but this is pushing us out the correct direction. The real question is this a transfer window? Let's select your Rados here, and let's see. Actually, that's kind of a transfer window. It's not the best transfer window in the world. But it kind of works. I'm okay with it. We can bring this down to about 1,000 megameters. Do it. We're currently low accuracy. We're probably going to have to adjust that orbit on the way. But sure, that looks fine. Let's light this up. So that's going to be an 8.6 minute burn. We'll burn through that at 10x. Wonderful. We're getting medium accuracy on this burn, but that's not shocking. And off we go with like 4 times as much heat shielding at this point. If this isn't enough, well, we'll see. It may or may not be enough heat shielding. We've solved the battery issue. That's not a problem. But the heat shield, that's an issue, for sure. So let's see if 4 times as much... Actually, it's more than 4 times as much heat shielding, isn't it? It's like 5 or 6 times as much heat shielding when you count all of the heat shielding that we have. So yeah, as expected, this is... Let's just warp this on forward here. I want to get into the... Are we in the sphere of influence right now? Oh yeah, that did automatically move us to the next event. Okay, nice. So that is absolutely wonderful. And once we're around over here, we're going to need to do some radial burning. So we've definitely missed this a fair amount. And we can just come in something like... something like this, approximately. Let's turn this way down on the sensitivity. And yeah, that looks fairly equatorial. We'll take this down to 1,000 megameters. Maybe we can get that a little closer in. This is about the best we've got. This is close enough. It's not terribly equatorial, but whatever. Let's go ahead and execute this. That looks fine. So 301 meters per second of dB. Let's pin open our fuel tanks over here so we can keep an eye on when we're going to need to do our staging. There we go. And that's going to be a 70-second burn. Let's just get that completed. Not the most efficient in the world to do this sort of a maneuver, but it's fine. We know that we have more than enough in terms of our delta V. So that's not a concern. So let's just bring this on in. Right. I forgot to turn off our program before we warped. Oh well. Gonna turn that off. It's fine. And we're going to, at the periapsis, circularize this. Then the question is, do we want to do a... Do we want to do an inclination change? And the answer is, honestly, at this distance, that's probably fine. So 1.356 megameters, or 1,356 megameters, I should say. So right up to about here. That's close enough. 366 meters per second, and let's do it. Okay. Lighting up that engine. There we go. And we've got about 25% fuel left in these tanks, so let's burn on through this. We'll get that inclination change done shortly. Okay. Wow, this is so precisely circularized that they're fighting over which one it is based on the floating point inaccuracies. That's hilarious. We're going to fix that, of course. And, exciting. Okay, so we're going to fix that, and the way that I'm going to fix that is by doing a new burn at the ascending node. It doesn't matter whether it's the ascending or descending. We're going to go for the ascending node. That'll be fine. So at this point, we are at an inclination of 93.35. We want to bring this down to 0. So that's going to be this. Of course, this is going to kind of flip positions with retrograde as we bring this over. So we're going to need to continue to do something like this, and we're going to combine that with retrograde, ideally, to bring this in nice and close. So this is about 1 degree inclination here. 0.41. Okay, so we're going to sit at about half a degree of inclination. This is fine, and then we're going to bring this in with a retrograde burn a little bit after this. That looks good. So 550 meters per second to do that inclination change. It would have been way cheaper to do it earlier on, but that's, you know, fine. So we're going to be locked to the planned burn here. We have our gyroscope offline right now due to power constraints. We could turn it on at this point. It's probably fine. Okay, we'll turn the gyroscope on for the moment. That will get that tumble under control. Looks fine. We're still going to have a little bit of awkwardness, but I'm not that concerned about it. Cool. I'm going to deactivate it now, and let's go through this burn. Our gimbal should be capable of mostly holding us in the correct attitude, so I'm not that concerned about it. Okay, so we're at a half degree of inclination at this point. It's good enough. I don't mind that. And we're going to make a burn somewhere around here. It's not going to be perfect on the apoapsis, but that's okay. It does not need to be. We can do a retrograde burn and bring this guy right on down to about 1,000 megameters, or rather 1,000 meters. Kilometers. Units are hard. Units are hard, apparently. Okay, so we're bringing this down to about 1,000 kilometers. That's too low. That is way too low. 1,001. Let's tune that down a little bit. And that's 1,000 kilometers. I like it. Go ahead and execute that burn. That'll be 295 meters per second to get us to that position. So that seems great. And are we still going to have some fuel left over in our drop tanks? Quite possibly. Yes, we are. Okay, but the expensive burn is coming. At the periapsis here, we're going to want to... Hang on, this is 977 kilometers. Actually, that's fine. So we're going to bring this right on in, like so. 977 kilometers. We don't need to adjust that at all, in theory, as long as we nail this up here. I'm going to have this be 1,000 kilometers. We'll see what it ends up actually looking like. But that's 2.5 kilometers per second to bring us down to this orbit. Looks good. So we're going to go ahead and execute that. There we go. We're going to drop these drop tanks partway through this burn, for sure. It's going to be about a 7-minute burn, and the drop tanks are going to go away right about now. So off they go. Fantastic. And we'll bring this right on down to about 1,000 kilometers. And this fuel here is fine for the moment. Okay. Bad things happened, TM. We need to plan a burn here, and we need to raise our periapsis a lot. Okay, so this is going to be at 916 kilometers. That's still too low. I'm not exactly sure what happened there. We shouldn't have gotten quite this low, in my opinion. But we need to do this, and we need to do this. Get ourselves rotated around here, and commence this burn. Like, right now. Commence the burn, please? I deleted the planned burn. This... Oh, we're out of fuel. Okay. That's fine. So we're out of juice at this point, unfortunately. All of the battery charge was down in that lower location. And so now we're just kind of tumbling at this point. So this is bad. This is really bad, and I don't know how we got into this state, to be quite honest with you. I'm going to extend our solar panels here because we need to get our attitude changed. But this might be a mission failure here. Okay, so the solar panels are generating some battery power here, and we're now burning this direction as much as we can. We need to be filling this tank, and we need to be draining this tank. Okay. So at this point, we need to keep an eye on this, because we need to counteract this gravity as much as we possibly can. So we're burning basically radial at this point. But this went very badly. This did not put the apoapsis and periapsis at all where it was supposed to. So that's understood. We're up to 833 kilometers here, and I'm going to take this up to 10x for the moment. Okay. Let's get this reoriented. We're up to 880 on the periapsis. This is still too low, but I believe we'll be okay in this regard. 886, 887, 888, 889, 890. I'm going to cut the burn right about now. Okay, so we're going back up at this time. But that was definitely not where it was supposed to put the nodes. No doubt about that. At the apoapsis, we're going to need to raise this up. And I want to raise it up to about 930 should be fine. So something like that, 10.6 meters per second is all we need. We just needed to lift ourselves up high enough, right? So for the time being, we're going to turn off our gyroscope. We're going to tumble a bit here, and we're just going to cruise on through this upper atmosphere, keeping an eye on our aerobrake here. Our aerobrake is definitely not ideal, but we need to get out of this atmosphere at this point. And yes, we're going to tumble. That is absolutely understood. Parts are taking damage. Hang on. We're going to stow our solar panels for the time being. I don't want to lose them. That would be bad. Okay. So now we're making our way up through the atmosphere. We are tumbling. That's expected. That's not an issue at this moment. We need to get ourselves up into the, or out of the upper atmosphere here. This was not where we were supposed to go. We definitely did not nail the accuracy of those burns. So that is absolutely noted. The good news is we are climbing out of the atmosphere at this point, and we've got plenty of leeway here for right now. So that looks good. We're at 905, and we just need to get this up to like 925. We need to go up another 25 kilometers or so. So that'll be absolutely wonderful. We do have some drag occurring at this moment, but this looks okay. I don't think this is a failure. This should be recoverable. Did we burn off any of our heat shield? I don't think that we did. I'd be surprised if we burned off any of our heat shield. Is that 187.4? Maybe. Maybe. We were not supposed to hit the atmosphere at that point. So that's absolutely noted. At this point, we are out of the atmosphere, so I want to plan a burn at the apoapsis here. This is going to be taking this up to 930 kilometers. So right about here. And we'll execute that. I also want to extend our solar panels here and get some power flow. Okay. Now we're in an appropriate orbit. So that looks much better. Apparently there's a craft out over here and over here. And we probably need to untrack those. But for now, this is fine. What we need to do at this point is just take a bunch of orbits and recharge our batteries before we actually make our approach. So this should be fine, but it was definitely an awkward approach. No doubt about that. Okay, well, I'm just going to warp this on up, and we are going to make our way around this a whole bunch of times as we recharge our batteries. That is absolutely going to need to happen. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Andy McGard, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time. Also, I just want to point out, while I was doing the outro there, I recharged the batteries. 5 million time warp will definitely do that, but it does not look pretty.